Welcome, everyone. Those who are here physically at the Haas School, and those who are somewhere, who knows where, in cyberspace. Welcome to our symposium, which is part of our Real Estate Fisher Center for Real Estate and Urban Economics Symposium series. This particular symposium is AI and Real Estate, Disruptor, Accelerator. I should also point out, for those who are curious about what we're doing here at Haas, that this has become one of our major areas of interest for study. As the world moves in that direction, we should too. And in fact, we're starting a new course in the fall, which will focus on AI technology and real estate and the interrelationship with real estate and technology. So for those who are students, please think about signing up for that. I think we're not going to have a problem getting students for that, but might as well do a little advertising. So before we get going, and I should point out this is part of a symposium series, we are building a sort of a library of topics that are relevant for real estate and hopefully will be on the cutting edge. There's a little bit of things I should remind you about. Please refrain from taking photos and recording. Just disruptive potentially. In the event of an emergency, hopefully that's not something that happens in a new building, exit through the back of the room and proceed to the stairs. Don't take the elevator for obvious reasons. The program, as I said before, is being live streamed, and so we have an audience, and we're going to keep to a very careful schedule because of that, since people are coming in the other way. At the end, you will be receiving a survey. We would love for you to give us any feedback. Let me sort of turn to the program itself. We're going to start with a keynote, which I'll be introducing in a moment. Then we have two panel sessions. The first panel session will talk about people who are actually investing in AI and real estate applications. And the second session will talk about several use cases, people that are doing it. And I think you'll find them all very interesting. We have really a compact program. Try to absorb everything may be tricky, but hopefully it'll be useful. Let me sort of turn now to our keynote speaker. We are very fortunate to have Anand Swaminathan from McKinsey. He's a senior partner, leads its digital program in Build, which is a program which tries to develop solutions for businesses in the digital world. You can imagine that's a complicated, multifaceted problem and issue. Before that, he was at McKinsey and head of Digital Asia. And prior to that, he looks very young, but obviously he can't be that young. He was 19 years at Accenture, where he was the global manager for their digital thing. He is obviously very interested and involved in technology solutions. He has written a book which is considered an outstanding addition for the business community, Digital at Scale, the playbook you need to transform your company, which has been very successful, a Wiley book. I'm not advertising to get it, but if you wish. Okay, and then he also has connections to academia. He's on the board of directors and the trustee at Case Western Reserve. Without further ado, it's indeed my pleasure to introduce Anand to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. All right. A pleasure to be with all of you. A very big thank you to Bob, Chris, Julie, and team for inviting me here today. I'm super excited to be here because I do love nerding out on anything AI or tech, but I will tell you a tiny story about my background with AI and tech and the fact that I didn't have any when I started and where that's really come to. I will quickly admit to you I am not a real estate expert of any kind, and therefore my comments, what I've kind of prepared for you today is a few thoughts on AI, but then also how that links into real estate. So it's mostly based on McKinsey research, but not my necessarily depth of expertise. But I think, I live in a building, I've gone through the process, I understand what's happening with real estate as an industry overall. So happy to share just how AI is actually affecting that. a quick story about me. So I was born in India. I grew up in the Middle East in Dubai, when it wasn't famous, it wasn't cool. There was no Disneyland. It was mostly sand. And technology was not something we adopted. We didn't have a lot of access to a lot of things growing up at that time. And then I went to Case Western Reserve University, and you know how they got me? They came to our campus in Dubai, and they said, we were the first ever fully wired Ethernet campus in the United States. And I was like, ooh, that sounds nerdy, but it sounds really cool. I'm all in for that. It was also partly I couldn't get into any of the other universities, so that's fine. Went to Case Western, and frankly, I started communicating through emails and learning how to use all that with my parents back in the Middle East. And it was really, really fun to say, okay, maybe technology is something I'd love to adopt and love to figure out. So I studied economics and math, but decided that's tech and engineering is where I wanted to go, and I started coding when I graduated university when I was 19, and I started coding right out of college, and I learned how to do that, and that was really fun. So for me, my entire 28, 29-year career, it's been in tech, and as Bob mentioned, I spent some time in Asia as well. So for a few years, I was running our Asia practice at McKinsey, and I'll tell you, tech accelerated in a very interesting way during the pandemic and during other times there too. So I'll share a few stories as we go through that as well. But just a pleasure to be with all of you and everyone online, and do my best to be thoughtful and maybe a few ideas that you might leave with today. So actually, the talk, I titled it, Capturing AI's Value Beyond the Hype. And it's primarily because it is very hype-oriented right now. Everywhere you go, everywhere you talk about, it's all about, oh, this is what I'm using it for, et cetera. But at the end of the day, at least from an organizational perspective, company perspective, people are wondering, how do I actually capture the value of anything from AI? Can I create revenue mechanisms? Can I actually create growth? Can I create acceleration? Just out of a show of hands, how many of you use Operator today, or have used Operator? Okay, that's really not a good thing, because Operator is OpenAI's, and you can use it through ChatGPT. It is their mechanism to go online and you can book anything you want. It's basically your virtual assistant ready for you to do anything you want in life. So if you're not using Operator today, you should use that. And it's why I actually talk a little bit about the hype versus the value. OpenAI certainly has millions and millions of users already on Operator. If you have a subscription with ChatGPT, et cetera, you can use it. What I ended up using it for recently, I went online, I typed in, I said I want to, I had a trip that I'm planning on doing with my family. So all I did is I typed in, I want to go with my family of 5. We want to travel to this destination. This is my total budget. I want to be able to fly like this and stay in hotels like this. Please book my travel. 9 seconds later, my trip was booked. Fully booked, right? Operator allows you to interact and do things like that. But again, someone's going to say, well, that's just hype. Is it actually creating value? Does it actually work? Where's the revenue streams coming from it? So that's why I talk a little bit about, is it just hype, or can we actually find ways to create value? So with any McKinsey presentation, we always have a lot of numbers and a lot of research, but what I want to share with you is a few things. So first off, we for the last few years, we've been conducting a research piece called, the State of AI. And what we do is we interview thousands of companies and leaders across those companies, and we try to find out what is happening in terms of the trends on spending, what's happening in terms of investments, what's happening in terms of capturing value. So what I'll share with you in a couple of pages here is, where's that value really coming from? So first off, anytime I see any of you have been to a Y Combinator presentation, if you haven't, again, something to check out. YC is one of the most innovative and I think one of the smartest tech accelerators out there. I've actually invested in a little over 100 companies through Y Combinator as an angel investor. 25 or so are in the AI space over the last few years. But what's fascinating about it is YC, always they tell you to put charts like this when you're a startup. They say, show a CAGR, show a TAM growing at crazy numbers. This is actually, those are mostly made up, but you don't actually know if they're real. This is actually real. This is the growth right now that we are expecting to see. And 2026 is not that far out, so we're not necessarily forecasting it a lot further, but we are expecting to see a pretty significant uptick, especially in the Gen AI space. So again, I'll conflate a little bit AI and Gen AI today, but at the end of the day, those are two separate things. But I'll conflate those as we talk through a little bit. But pretty significant growth in terms of what's going to happen over here. And there is a question that's always asked: is it actually incremental? Is it new spend, or am I just diverting spend? What are we doing over there? And what's fascinating, again, when we ask these organizations, 60% of the companies that responded said they are decreasing or canceling other IT spend and diverting it to AI-based investments. There's also a number of companies that are decreasing non-IT budget, and they are sending that towards AI. But almost 40% say they are creating net new budget and net new investments towards AI. That's a pretty staggering statistic. Now, if you rewind the clock 20 years, there was a concept of digital. Everything is going digital. Everything is going mobile. That was not anywhere close to the reinvestment that happened in the digital era. Instead, in the AI era, it is actually happening both reinvestment speed as well as net new incremental spend that's actually happening. I think, therefore, maybe we pay a little bit of attention to it. The question you might then ask is to say, all right, that's fine, but where is that spend actually happening? So there seems to be about 4 or 5, areas within organizations where it's happening. And I'll get to the real estate version of this in just a second. But what's happening here is, look, you would all expect software engineering. Bay Area has been hit pretty hard from the software engineering side. The number of layoffs on engineers, product owners, architects is quite significant. Klarna, the buy now, pay later company, they decided to make an announcement that said, hey, we won't need to be hiring any more employees. No more humans. We're only going to use and deploy from now on AI. That's a pretty bold statement for a multi-billion-dollar organization to say, we no longer need people. There are organizations that have used the language, we need to convert our FTEs to AIEs, full-time employees to AI-based employees. And there is a significant shift happening. Software engineering is one of the biggest parts of that. Tens of thousands of Bay Area engineers and technologists who are being displaced because you don't need anymore those types of engineering talent. By the way, there was a great article that I read the other day where they said, we have a new startup, we're hiring vibe coders, and that's it. We need about 5 vibe coders. Does anybody know what vibe coding is? Have you figured that out? Okay, you do, sir. So vibe coding is this fascinating concept of you just talk, you just think out loud, and you're essentially creating lines of code as you communicate with an engine. That's vibe coding. We only need 5 vibe coders. The rest, we've got AI to basically cover and build our technology stack. It's a very different world that we're about to go into, and it's quite real, and it's happening. The other areas, customer operations, call centers, self-service. Most of you have seen probably the Discover ad where, I forget the name of the ad, Coolidge. She's sitting there going, how do I know I'm not talking to an AI bot? And the AI bot goes back to you, how do I know I'm not talking to an AI customer? And that's spot on, right? How do we really know who we're communicating with? Do you know that about 25% of all marketing now, digital marketing, is happening from AI to AI agents? So there's AI-based marketing, is marketing to an AI bot to actually improve where your products and search results show up, or improve essentially what's going to happen in what you buy. AI to AI marketing. We're no longer marketing to humans anymore. So there is a pretty significant shift. So marketing is taking that. Sales and channel is the other area. At the end of the day, salespeople, again, that's becoming quite affected. And what I find fascinating about it is, do I really want to be sold to by a human who can only go as fast as perhaps that individual can be, versus have all the plethora of products and services that can be offered to me by an AI sales agent? more people now prefer AI sales agents and AI sales capabilities that they want to interact with. Product and R&D is the other area. So at the end of the day, AI is creating pretty significant value in these areas. And so what's also then we find is, well, adoption is also happening in a similar pattern. Marketing and sales, that's the percentage of people and business units that are really saying we are going to adopt AI because we think it's the biggest value creation for us. Product and our service development, IT, service operations. This is where you're seeing adoption in all of your businesses, in all of the organizations you serve, you're part of, or you advise. At the end of the day, this is where you should be thinking about what can AI actually do from a disruption standpoint. And frankly, I love these curves. We've again seen curves that get disrupted, or there was this great chart that I used to see and I used to use a lot, where how long did it take to get to 1 million users, right, or 100 million users? OpenAI was a few minutes, right? It's one of the fastest in history to get 1 million users signed up, right? And it's a fun chart to actually watch because Facebook took a long time, or longer than a few minutes, and things like that. And so just really at the pace at which it's happening, what we are seeing is the use of AI is actually accelerating. And so there is a question, is it going to go faster, or are we basically seeing the pace at which this is going to go? We believe, and most researchers and most analysts believe, it will go much faster than even what we see today. Naturally, with Gen AI, we don't have data beyond 2023 because that's really when Gen AI started to become prevalent, but it is accelerating quite fast. And what's also interesting is the rate at which organizations are saying, how many business functions within my company should I be deploying AI to? It's also accelerating. And there's a really funny part. When the team first put this chart together, I started laughing because they put first half of 2024 and second half of 2024. I said, why'd you break up the year? They said, it literally accelerated so much more within the calendar year. We couldn't even say that basically it's just a trend for 2024. There was actually it's almost a seismic shift halfway through 2024. That's why we talk about first half and second half, and you'll see that in a couple more of my slides here as well. So then we say, okay, how are we using AI? And I'll get to your real estate stuff in just a second. How are we using AI? Well, most of us use it for text. Right? You type something in. Actually, most of us use it completely incorrectly. You use it like Google. Again, I was surprised that no one has used Operator before. No one's booking travel. No one's using it to book your meetings. No one's setting up calendar appointments through it. No one's actually saying, hey, go ahead and contact this person's assistant and have my meeting booked, please. That is how we communicate now. That is how people are working now. So most of us use it for text and search. Hey, tell me something about this. Most of us use it for deep research. Again, hopefully some of you are using deep research with something like OpenAI or other services like within Gemini. It'll give you essentially your research paper and what you really want to think about within 2-3 pages and within a few minutes. So most of it is text, but images is taking off. And I'm sure many of you saw, Dolly and other things like, hey, let's put in, I want this image, I want that image. My kids have been playing with these things constantly. And I do find it fascinating where the usages are coming in. Computer code, of course, that is the other big trend right now. Video generation. You all, of course, know who Reid Hoffman is. You all understand that he created his own AI. He calls it Reid AI. Here's the funny thing. So he does that last summer, right? So last summer he posted on LinkedIn. I have 3 children. They just turned 17 and the twins just turned 15. So my older one, my 3 boys. And my oldest son, Rowan, goes, he sees this and he goes, hey, Dad, can I just come and take a quick video of you for 30 seconds? I just need a quick video. And I said, well, why do you need a video of me? He's like, I got a special birthday present I want to build for you. He was 16 at the time last summer. So he comes in, takes a 30-second video, has me say a couple of things. He goes home. He goes back. 2 weeks later, he said, hey, happy birthday. I have something really special to show you. I said, what you got? He said, I built an AI of you. And it's a fully live AI with the avatar. He can speak to it. He can converse to it. What he did is he built a custom GPT. He basically fed it my book. He fed a bunch of articles I've written. There's a bunch of interviews of me online. He took all of that and put that in there. And then he starts talking to it. And literally, I talk back. And he asks a question. He's like, Dad, what should I study in university? what should I actually do as a job? And if you go to his LinkedIn profile, Rowan Swaminathan, if you go check it out, it's one of his earliest posts. And he literally posted a video interview with me on an AI. He did that in 2 weeks, goofing off at his desk after taking a 30-second video of me. This is the capability that we have. And you know, if a 16-year-old can do it, we should all be trying to do it and learning that really, really fast. So there's also a little bit on, okay, is it creating any value? Great, we've got the hype. We understand it's going to go fast. Is it creating any value? There is real value that we believe it comes in. And actually what I'll do is, by the way, I know we said please don't take any pictures. I'm happy, Julie and Bob and Chris and team, I'm happy for these slides. These are all research-based slides from McKinsey. So if you do want access to it, Julie or team could get it to you after this. But I actually want to get into the real estate part of this because real estate has been really slow. Great, there's value coming in other industries. Why is real estate so slow? And our survey kind of shows it's not just a laggard, it's kind of like a solid laggard in how it's thinking about things. And I'm going, hang on a minute. You know, when I go in to buy a new home, when companies are trying to sign new leases, when they're trying to attract customers to those to their particular commercial real estate properties, why are we not using that today? I moved to Asia during the pandemic. And so I moved to Singapore during the pandemic, and it was a wacky time to move to Singapore. But I moved, and you know, my entire experience was done fully virtually, right? I toured the home that I was going to rent virtually. I toured the city of Singapore. I'd been there many times. My family had not, and they're like, where are we heading again? I'm like, this is the spot, little dot. We toured everything, and it was available. So my real estate transaction was fully done through digital capability. AI, and by the way, that was like a chore, because most of it was garbage, what I got to see with the house and whatever I got to see. I was like, you just can't take an iPhone and walk around for 2 minutes? But at the end of the day, the adoption has been slow in this industry. And what's also really happening is we are seeing there is actual real value in the real estate industry if you were to adopt it. So companies that are starting to do it well, they're saying, can I do better deal making, better portfolio analysis, better churn analysis? Can I actually deploy this in a pretty significant value way? And very clearly what we're starting to see, there is value. It's just a sleepy industry. Sorry. It's just a sleepy industry, and it's not ready to go yet. But one of the things we did in our research paper is we said, let's actually dive deep where that value can come in. And we kind of said there are very specific use cases that if you deploy, we do see pretty significant value uptick in here. Again, rental outcomes, operations, tenant experience, asset selection, portfolio and asset management. It's already happening. So for those who have not adopted it and for those who have not taken the lead on it, we're quite far behind. And so the question does become, how should we think about capturing this value? And actually, and this is where I'm going to close in just a second here. I actually believe in real estate, we might be at a very interesting inflection point, and it now might be the time. You're not overly late yet. You're behind, but you're not overly late yet. And the reason for that is the technology has actually evolved to allow you to have the tools to do what you need to do. We're also finding that the customers are ready. Because at the end of the day, for technology to work, you need both sides of the equation to actually happen. Someone has to build the technology and the capability. Customers then have to be ready to use it. You actually have that opportunity right now. And again, our research shows that if you really think about operating performance, if you think about supply chains, this is the time to basically do it. So look, I'll close with this. And happy to take questions. I think Bob will ask 1 or 2 questions. I'll close with this. This is the time. Hope you'll all be excited about it. Hope you'll all sign up and use Operator. Hope you'll create agents. Hopefully you're all creating AI agents for yourself to do work for you because it's available. But I think I would move as fast as you can because disruption is going to happen to each of you by the end of this week or next month. But great meeting you.
Thank you very much for entertaining and interesting presentation. There was something you raised about AI was accelerating in the second half of 2024, and you said this trend is going to persist, but talk about the forces that may be against adoption, which might be such things as abuse,
Yeah.
Calling up my secretary
Yes.
inappropriately or something like that, or the risks that are concerned with using AI,
Yeah.
that your son now sort of goes
Yeah.
to your bank account,
Yeah.
or something. I'm sure he wouldn't, but just in case.
No, that's fair.
Change the code. And what regulation may be coming in that's
Yep.
it's been unregulated
Yep.
up to this point. So
I love that. I think that's a great question. Anybody read the book Super Agency by Reid Hoffman that came out a couple months ago? All right, this group has got to get more energy and catch up with what's happening right outside these walls. It's right here in the Bay Area. I would all go read or listen to the Super Agency book by Reid Hoffman. The reason is he talks exactly about what Bob just mentioned. Regulation has disrupted innovation continuously. And maybe in many cases for good reason, right? We do need some aspects of regulation because there's clearly abuse happening. I actually worry, Bob, not what my son will do to my bank account. I worry about how AI will disrupt him and how he might get abused through what actually happens in there. So there is misinformation, there's hallucination, there's inaccurate information consistently happening. So I do think those are things that are going to slow it down a little bit. But what Reid talks about in his book, we're going to plow right through it. We're going to plow right through it because of the value potential that we're actually seeing. So if we can adopt at speed, but with thoughtfulness, it might actually work pretty well. But I think it could be a little bit of bumps.
I'm worried about the real Avatar. If you've seen the movie Companion on Hulu, falls in love and acts as the assassin.
That's right.
To her boyfriend.
That's right.
So I'm going to
Don't go hugging robots yet, but it can do a lot of other things in the meantime.
make sure. You said that real estate has been a slow adopter. How do you feel that pace is going to change, and why is it going to change?
I think it changes now because the customers are demanding it. I actually was, at McKinsey & Company, we have at 555 California Street downtown in San Francisco. We're actually starting to ask our, the people who manage the buildings, we need this, we need that. The customers are driving what the industry needs to come and do. So I think, Bob, it goes faster than even it's been before because we're going to demand it. And we're going to say, I need more information. I need better analytics. I need to know, do I use my space effectively or not? I need it if I buy a home. I do think it has to change because we'll demand it. And I think customers will drive that faster.
It is true that real estate is one of the most inefficient markets.
It's a very
and you'd think that
relaxed
would be the
industry.
obvious place to have AI move in, but it hasn't happened. And great to hear that it may be. There's also other changes happening beyond AI which may affect AI and its adoption. Talk about quantum computing and how that might fit into this whole picture.
Yeah, I think compute power, it's been fascinating to watch quantum computing truly become a distinctive capability. And we now all have access to it, like organizations are getting access to it. So I think, Bob, to that question, I do feel this is one of those accelerants to adoption, to usage, to value creation. And I do think quantum computing itself as a capability is accelerating at such speed. But there is a flip side of it, which is, well, I need more storage, I need more processing capability, I need all of these things. There is going to be a bit of a put and take to figure out how that adoption might actually happen. But I think quantum computing here to stay, and it's making life a lot better as well.
Let me add a sort of a frill to that question. People worry about power. Mm. You're talking about we have all these data centers, we need more depth, more and more power. How does that fit into? Isn't that a disruptor for AI?
Apparently, in China, the AI company there does not seem to need half or even a quarter of the power and compute that we seem to need over here. But there are some interesting discussions about that. I don't know if you've seen videos of Jensen Huang, who's the NVIDIA founder and CEO. He's been talking about, well, if China can do that, can we do it as well? Can we use less power? Can we use less energy? There was a very funny piece. Sam Altman of OpenAI said, can you all please stop thanking ChatGPT after you're done asking what you needed to do? It's using compute power for it to say you're welcome. So please stop typing thank you after it has given you something. It doesn't care whether you thank it or not. And it is fascinating how much power was used for just to be able to say you're welcome. So I think that at the end of the day, this is going to be a big wrestling match that we're really going to have on power. But at this stage, it does hopefully won't be linear, and there will be a shift in terms of usage goes up, but the amount of power demand is not going up at the same level.
Yeah, you talked about China. They're building a coal-fired power plant, one a month. So there's some other trade-offs of AI,
Yep.
power, and environment, which who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, hard to speculate. Yep.
Some of the areas that have really seem to have evolved are AVMs and assessment models. Do you feel those are really going to be major improvements in this area with AI?
It's possible, yes. I think that the best thing right now is we're in the experimentation phase. We're experimenting with what we want to use it for, how we want to use it, and any other external forces or tools or capabilities that are available, we're willing to test it out. The number of, in this most recent Y Combinator batch that was about 2 months ago, it was like a couple hundred companies launched. 90% are AI companies, right? Are all of them going to do fine? No. But it is very interesting that as these other forces come in, it's forcing all of us to take the value chain in any industry and say, can I deconstruct that value chain and apply AI in pieces and parts? Therefore, I think there will be more and more of that drives some of the adoption and changes. But the question is just how much and the proliferation of it and how much of it's going to be relevant.
Let me ask a very unfair question. But as you look at AI, I could be on Mars if I had a connection. How do I regulate this?
I think governments are certainly trying to regulate usage of actually what AI's capabilities are. A great example, what data sets can I use? What voices can I use? All of you remember the Scarlett Johansson, scandal that happened, right? That sounded a lot like Scarlett Johansson. Is it Scarlett Johansson's voice or not? I think regulation will play a role. By the way, I was just in LA this couple days ago. Hollywood believes, and the Screen Actors Guild believe, they will go on strike again very, very soon. Right? And primarily they believe that because of the forces of AI. They feel there has to be better regulation, better protection for them. But if you all have not, maybe, I'm leaving you with lots of nuggets of things not to read in my book, but read other things or watch other things. If any of you watched the Ben Affleck segment on CNBC about 3-4 weeks ago, he does a 2-minute video and he talks about the power of AI and where it's going to disrupt things and where it's not, and where regulation will play a role and where it's not. I realize you're all thinking, really, Ben Affleck? He has a phenomenal perspective that he shares at CNBC on that. Watch that. It'll answer a little bit even more of that particular question of, we do think regulation will happen. We do think disruption will happen. I think the pace, though, will not be as effective with regulation because I think users are just going to outpace that. We are using it in a pace that there's no way to... AI is literally rewriting how it actually works.
If you had to say where AI is going to have the most impact, industrial, real estate or otherwise, where would you look for all those investors out there?
Oof. In an industry, it's hard to claim any industry because it's actually all. You name an industry and AI will play a role. I actually would love to change that question, Bob, to which functions do I think it might disrupt the most? And I actually think engineering, product development, anything to do with software and tech, it is going to be pretty significantly disrupted and therefore a lot of value to be created. I think in places like industry, anything to touch a customer, end customer, which is basically 99.99, you are going to find AI is going to play a very meaningful role in disrupting that and creating value in that. So I think we should just all find ways to adopt. Most importantly, just experiment, play with it, do it as much as you can, use it every day. Don't use it as Google. Try to use it as an actual capability. Like honestly, if you all go home tonight and build an agent for yourself in OpenAI, it'll take you about 15 minutes maximum. You can have an agent and you can be ready to go.
So I'm just going to end by saying I thought the heart of rock and roll was in Cleveland. Turns out the most wired place as well.
It used to be.
Okay. Thank you very much for great presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
So just like the speed of AI, we're trying to keep this things moving. So if I can welcome up the next panel. What we're trying to do is we just got a great high-level overview of where AI is, how fast it's moving, but we want to try to continue to drill down, sort of make the funnel a little narrower, and talk to a number of leading experts on what's really happening on the real estate side of AI, where they think there's the opportunity set, and what we should all be thinking about going forward. So as everybody takes their seat, for those who don't know me, I'm Chris Hartung, the Executive Director of the Policy Advisory Board at the Fisher Center, and really excited to have this panel because we've got three really different perspectives. To my immediate left is Brenton Brickhofer. He, as you can see, because he's wearing a sport coat, he's either in real estate or old, and he's not old. Martin and I are the old guys. But he is the head of Divco Ventures, which has been investing in tech companies through the real estate lens for over a decade, and a Cal grad. Next to Brenton is David Bloom. He is truly in-house, one of the partners at the House Fund, which really focuses on very early stage tech companies, a lot of AI focus right here on campus. And you can tell he's the young, truly tech guy in the jeans and the T-shirt. And then Martin Milani, to his left, has been in technology and real estate as a serial CEO, CTO, senior executive for years, and has been playing around with AI since DARPA. So he comes at it with a very broad lens, but really that sort of company perspective. So really excited to have everybody here. So let's dive right in. I'm going to start by just going right down the list here, Brenton, with you first. You heard a little bit from our keynote about where we're going. Where do you think we are in AI deployment within the real estate industry? Are we even at pre-K yet? Or maybe we've graduated to kindergarten, or we're still in diapers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, thanks, Chris and Fisher Center, for having me. It's great to be back on campus here as a Haas grad. So, to the question, I think we are certainly still in the very, very early innings. And I think what we've seen, Anand touched on it a little bit, there's a number of applications, but we're just really scratching the surface. I think the last couple of years, what we saw, a lot of the innovation was really at the infrastructure level. So how do we build the best models? How do we put in more data center capacity? How do we get energy to that data center capacity to actually enable us to now build applications on top of that? And so what we're just starting to see is some very interesting real estate specific or construction specific, development specific applications, built and tailored for our use cases and our industries. I think it's still in a little bit of experimentation mode, but the results are starting to get really good. And I think what we're going to see over the next couple years is really a proliferation of these applications. And we can get into some areas where we're seeing, some of those, but it's across the development life cycle, particularly you think design, architectural, structural engineering, building operations, leasing, portfolio management. That's kind of gets to the customer-facing piece of it. And then the whole back office, tons of different workflows, very data-driven workflows that we're going to see a lot of automation in the next few years.
And so, David, turning to you, I want to sort of flip the question a little bit. You heard Anand talk about everybody get active, everybody deploy. You're seeing some of the best and brightest minds here coming off the Berkeley campus, coming to you guys, solutions across the AI perspective. Can you put where you're seeing real estate in the context of all the other solutions and ideas that you have coming at you guys?
In terms of how far along
Yes.
I think we're at pre-K for everything. Even for software development and product development that we see a ton of. That was the first wave. We're still at the very. These companies are a year or two old at tops, so we really don't even know how big those can get. We see a good amount in real estate or adjacent. We've seen a lot on specifically the application layer around a lot of stuff in voice, like how do you actually engage with your tenants, or how do you actually manage your property in a better way of ingesting data, collecting data, all like all you can really imagine. So we've seen a lot in there. We've seen also a lot of, let's go a little bit deeper, maybe more on the construction, like structural engineering, architecture. How do you kind of productize tribal knowledge? In the past, you could not really, put the mind of an architect in software. Now you can. So we've seen a lot more innovation around like really taking out, 80, 90% of the workflow and just letting, whether it's an architect, designer, property manager, really do what they do best.
So Martin, let's dive a little bit more into the tech side and where we are. I mean, we're hearing a lot, okay, we've used LLM models to help streamline some stuff. Maybe people have taken their customer service experience in apartments and been able to get more leases out of it. But we're barely even moved from sort of query to agentic to, full reasoning. Where do you see us in that evolution? And at what stage do you think we're going to get really massive impacts to the real estate space?
Well, I think AI right now is synonymous with LLMs, which is really nothing other than repeating whatever it's heard. It doesn't think. And I think we are probably in the first 2 or 3 years of a 15, 20-year cycle. So there's a lot left. And I think it's actually scary how intelligent these things can get. And I think that's coming. With respect to real estate, I think, as we just heard, a lot of it is in, chatbots and interactions, perhaps a little bit of, image recognition. Again, a lot of these things have been around for a very long time. Most of these things came from the military, satellite images and so on and so forth, and they've been around for a long time. But I think real estate, going back to what we did quite a few years ago, is actually a pretty sophisticated problem set. It's not looked at it that way often, but it is really sophisticated. Many years ago, we basically built a platform to do a few things, including facilities management. And in the process, we ended up building something which was a dynamic workflow engine, because that's what you really needed. Or else your workflows would only work 20% of the time, because 80% of the time you have exceptions to the rules in real operations. So we ended up building a very sophisticated workflow engine, or a process flow engine, which was using dynamic constraint satisfaction. The problem that we had is you needed to have a PhD in applied math to know what we were talking about, and the customers didn't really understand. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is the problem set is pretty sophisticated, and it does require a lot. And you can get a lot out of real estate. You can get a lot of efficiencies out. I don't know. I mean, to me, the way I would look at it from a technology perspective, I would go after efficiencies. To me, it's a highly siloed, inefficient process. So that itself, I think it's where the action is going to be probably over the next 5 to 7 years, in my view.
So it's interesting you say on the margin side. So even though we're in this early innings, we are beginning to see from the real estate side some real change in that. So there's 2 companies I know of that they think, even though it isn't true AI, but at least technology adoption, they can move 500 to 600 margin points of gain on an acquisition at a property. On the multifamily side, there's companies that have gone from 36 units per employee to 45 units per employee and are doing 96% of their new tenant tours either virtual or self-guided, and then have a bot that actually takes that and moves it to lease at about 10 to 15 percentage points higher than the human would do. So it's already starting, even though we're in this sort of pre-kindergarten mode of things.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, like risk management and actually sort of kind of investment kind of thesis. Right now, you typically do these in spreadsheets. These are, 20, 30 variables. You sort of kind of assign some sort of a percentage to them, and it sort of linearly solves it. Well, the work doesn't work linearly. Imagine a system that could get tens and hundreds of thousands of variables interconnected, correlated, and actually simulate multiple scenarios in a matter of an hour or two. Well, that's actually we're not far from that. And if you actually do that, you're going to get something that is going to be far more probably efficient and accurate than when you have a human-mediated sort of a kind of a spreadsheet model that is used today. And imagine something like that can continuously learn and gets better in its real time. Think of what automated trades in the stock market are. I mean, people kind of do these things in the stock market, right? They sort of things change between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And the systems, their trades, everything that they do continuously updates itself. But same thing can be done with real estate. And there's a lot of money that goes into real estate, so there's a lot to actually squeeze out as well.
So Brenton, let's take what Martin's talking about. So you guys are in an enviable seat. You've been investing in prop tech solutions for longer than most peers of yours, but then you get to figure out how to deploy it into the assets. Talk about where you see the structural impediments to doing solutions that Martin's talking about that in our asset class. Is it the siloed within the organization, the different functionality that's done at, let's say, at the building or the property? How do you guys try to combat that to take solutions that you're investing in and put it at the property?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a few elements to that. One piece of it is on the data side. Although the industry has tons of data, a lot of the data is siloed. So I think that's step one. And that's where DivCo started on the journey even more than a decade ago, was to build kind of a unified technology infrastructure across the organization to pull all the data in to a central place, cleanse it, get it all in the right format such that it then can be opened up to applications, AI being kind of one type of application to open it up to. I think the other piece is change management. So, if there's going to be a new technology that's dramatically changing how things are done, you need to think about, well, how do you actually implement that? How do you train people? How do you create the right incentives? So again, having our technology team building the foundational layer, they also put together a training program. So, how should you be using this? What are the use cases? How can you integrate this into your workflow? And then the final piece is really kind of operationalizing and scaling it. This industry is large. You look at our portfolio. There's multiple asset classes, markets across the country, lots of local teams. So figuring out that scaling piece is, I think, where we are really right now as an industry. That's sort of the next step. So we've been working hard to, again, create kind of standardized processes across the organization so that each team can sort of implement AI in the same way. But yeah, it's a lot of coordination. Getting all those things right can be complicated, especially for a local business. But I think what's really interesting about AI is that it actually makes the user interface simpler than ever, and it makes training simpler than ever. As Anant was just talking about earlier, you go on Operator and you just speak to it. You tell it what you want it to do, and it does it. So we're really at the cusp of that, and I think it's going to unlock a ton of adoption across the industry.
So one follow-up to that. So in the time you've been sort of deploying these solutions into the property, what's been the most disappointing outcome, and where do you see the most hope for future outcomes based on where you see AI going?
Sure. So a couple thoughts there. I think one, on the disappointing side, we've tested tons of different solutions over the years. I think we're always learning, we're always iterating. I think one of the areas where we've learned the most is around how does the AI interact with the human. We're firm believers that the AI solutions that we're adopting are going to be enhancers and supporters of our teammates. They're not going to be replacers of our teammates. Really, I think the power of this technology is that it enables you to do more. So there's been a couple of solutions we've deployed where the interface between the human and the on-site team was not as tight as it should have been. And so that made, instead of making the on-site team's job easier, it made it more challenging. So we quickly learned and iterated from that. Again, it goes back to training. It goes back to change management. But there's a few examples there. And then on the, really the win side, I think we've been really excited about the customer-facing applications. And one in particular is around leasing and property management on the residential side. So we've invested in and deployed a solution called Elise AI. It's a conversational AI platform that manages the entire kind of journey of a renter across single-family, multifamily, student, all types of residential environments. And it is amazing what it's capable of. Responding 24/7 in real time, very complete and thorough responses within 5 minutes. It's able to handle almost all leasing volume for even some of the largest real estate owners in the country. Now it's doing renewals. Now it's doing delinquency collections. It's able to boost delinquency collections 40% relative to traditional processes. It's handling maintenance requests. It's handling tenant concierge experiences. It's doing lease audits behind the scenes when everyone's asleep. So the breadth of the automation is pretty amazing. And what, again, that's doing is that's actually enabling the leasing team, the property management team, to have more one-on-one connection with tenants and deliver a higher level of service on top of the automation underneath.
Great. So, David, if we can stick on the deployment piece of this, because you can talk across deployment of solutions across economic sectors, right? Help us understand, what you've seen as where we're failing as a real estate industry relative to other industries in adoption, take-up, usage, however you want to frame that, because you need to obviously figure that out to underwrite the companies to get a return.
Yeah. So funny enough, Brett and I have actually invested together for like the last decade in a lot of real estate stuff, kind of pre-AI and now in AI. I think the biggest problem we've seen, it's the buying behavior is much different, right? You're selling into a big, tech company, kind of know who's going to be buying it, who's responsible for AI solutions, who they're going to deploy to with the engineering team. Every real estate company is different. Every asset class is different. Every CEO has a different priority, right? And so I think the sales cycle or go-to-market is the biggest question, because it's obviously, I always kind of say this, like a lot of the problems are known in real estate and construction. We know where things are inefficient. We know things are low margin. But how to actually get that done and who's actually responsible for that has been one of the harder things for us to figure out over the last, 5-6 years. I think the one nice thing is it's with AI, everything's so much cheaper to build. So you can give out solutions for very cheap or even free. We've seen a lot of different companies basically building out software and giving away for free to the users and then only monetizing off transactions or referrals or something else. So that lowers the bar of people willing to actually go try it out. So I think especially in very complicated industries or with multiple stakeholders in the value chain, that's like a really big unlock. And it's like, if it's free, why not try it out, right? So I think we've seen some more uptick in that and harder to find, industries, right? Whether it's, in the healthcare system or real estate or construction or manufacturing.
So, to that actually brings up an interesting sort of piece of one of the things that people got really wrong during the dot-com boom was who owns the customer, who owns the data, and if value is created, who owns that? And so all of a sudden, the tech companies were thinking on all three of those formats, they owned it. The real estate people said, oh, no, we own it, but the difference of who owns it was, a 30x multiple in valuation. How do you think about that piece? Is doing it by transaction sort of cut through that and solve that issue, or are your companies still struggling with who owns what and who gets to capture the value?
Yeah, I don't know if it solves it. We're too early to tell if it solves it. I think each industry, like what a transaction means, if it's a high volume, low cost transaction, is a lot different than companies trying to get a piece of this real estate sale, right? That's a very different thing. I don't think it's, I think data at least from a tech company perspective, that's the bread and butter. That's what you need to own. So there'll always be that pull from our side, right? right? And so how we can actually use it. I think the one interesting thing is how AI allows us to interact with data. It's a lot easier, right? It's a lot easier to parse it, to collect it, to analyze it. And so there's actually ways we've seen a lot of kind of more on the infrastructure side of anonymizing data and finding ways to kind of share data, but either, not fully transparently, but both sides feel good about it, right? So if you can, both sides feel like they own the data, that's a really important part. And so hopefully we can train our models better that way and then actually deliver better value.
So, Martin, focusing on the data side, right? Because data is pretty critical, and we've talked about already, and even Anand talked about it. Silos, different data sets, different owners of this stuff. When you think of the ability to capture and then use data, what do you think we need from either the technology perspective or the industry perspective to really get the data to fully work together, and how long is it going to be till we get there? And that may be the wrong way to talk about it, but rephrase it.
I'm not going to guess on how long, but the data is pretty siloed, and it's owned by obviously, depending on where it's sitting, and sometimes even within the same organization, you have these silos where necessarily the data or the willingness to share that data isn't there. But with that said, I think there's a couple of things I wanted to quickly touch base on. One is this whole kind of interaction. Typically, human-to-computer interaction has been sort of kind of confounded to whatever UI you're dealing with. A browser interface. There's a bunch of data points. They're answering a few things, and that's basically all that's captured. I think when you're actually getting to a machine that you're talking to, then that data, it becomes infinitely more rich. And there's a lot more data that be captured in a bi-directional conversation. And that's what LLMs actually allow. You're not talking to the computer. For some of you guys that are, my age, remember, in Star Trek, the old ones, when they talk to the computer, they would ask it, and they would go and say, oh, well, here's what it is. Well, those are called expert systems, and basically a system that you interact with, and it goes and actually does a bunch of different things, goes across multiple different other types of systems and data silos and so on and so forth. It grabs that information, and brings it back to you. So I think now you're going to see that data exponentially grow, and I think there is a lot that you can now harvest that you didn't actually have the opportunity to do so. And I think real estate, because again, going across multiple different silos and how much data there is across all of those silos, blending these things together is not an easy task. But that's something that, and remember, now the data isn't passive anymore because it's no longer just presented, but now you're hearing stuff back, and based on whatever is that interaction going back and forth, that data gets richer and immediately can be sort of kind of presented back. And I think there's a lot of innovation that can happen in that area.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper. So for each of you, if you had $10 million, well, of course, David, you do, and others, but let's say personally, right? You had $10 million to invest in 2 companies, so $5 million each. Where would you be focusing in real estate for a solution set? And Brenton, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well,
I know putting you on the spot, but two ideas that you would be focused on with that money.
Sure. Well, I think again, there's a few parts of the development life cycle where we think, okay, there's going to be massive unlocks of value creation, and maybe one I'll speak to is really on the design and architecture piece. Whether it is the original design creation through to design review, through to code compliance, through to takeoffs and estimation. I think there's a massive opportunity to actually both the generation and the review side of these designs to really automate and optimize, again, in coordination with architect of record, structural engineer of record, to take cost out of the full construction process, reduce downstream risks, and shorten time horizons on development. And particularly in this cost constrained environment, that time is money. So I think that is going to be an area of tremendous unlock for all stakeholders. What's interesting about that is it touches the owner, touches the architect, touches the GC, and so all sides of that transaction move faster and take risk out, take cost out.
Well, I would before you answer number two, I'd also just say let's not forget if that actually happens, that actually helps communities, right? Because it actually lowers the occupancy costs, it lowers cost of entry. You can unlock some of those costs to go back to infrastructure items, right? I mean, I agree. If we can figure that out, it's much more than just the economic stakeholders if you can do that. Okay, but number two.
Totally. We build faster, we build better, and we build more of what we need. So I think it's a huge win. The second piece is back to, we talked a little bit about the customer facing parts of real estate. I think that is going to be a tremendous unlock 24/7 wherever you are, whatever channel you need, whether it's text or email or voice or video, the ability to interact with your leasing person, your property manager, your asset manager, all your key stakeholders, is going to unlock a tremendous amount of value for the tenant experience and for just the management the management efficiency, the ability to tailor the experience to each tenant, and reduce the burden to kind of deliver on maintenance and support and renewals and all the different functions served there. I think that's going to be a tremendous unlock that again brings down the cost of housing, allows us to manage more assets with the team that you have, and I think is a win-win-win.
Yep. Which is great. And for the first idea, stay around for our idea panel, or our execution panel, if you will, coming out after this. We actually have Gensler here to talk about what they're doing around visualization items and some of the stuff that Brenton was talking about. I'm going to skip David and move to Martin to give you a little bit more time. So Martin, if you, and by the way, you launched Project Magi. You are in the middle of putting together a fund for investment. You just came off of a renewable energy CEO position that you ended up selling. Where do you think, if you had that $10 million to invest in two places, where would you be focusing right now? Or, by the way, you could say, I'm going to wait for 2 years because it's going to get that much better.
I was going to say, can I do three? Or
well, you can do three.
Well, that's a tough one. I think I learned a lot from whatever we did about 25 years ago. So I think sort of facilities management, both for sort of kind of interactions with tenants, tenant improvements, interaction with third-party trades, as well as IoT. I mean, back then IoT wasn't as accessible as it is today, so we had to spend a lot of time building these custom interactions to things like escalators and elevators, so on and so forth. A lot of that stuff is available today. So kind of, I think an area to kind of do a hybrid model where you interact with humans and devices and sort of kind of do what you need to do in terms of day-to-day facility management. I think that's something that I think still wide open. Even though a lot of people try to do it, I think it can be done a lot better now. And I would probably have to say this one is a little bit longer term. I mean, okay, if I had $5 million and I wanted to wait 5 or 7 years and not necessarily trying to flip something in 2 or 3, real estate simulation is what I would say I would focus on. And what does that mean? Basically, the ability to build models where you could simulate everything from, again, the project. Think of it as I hate the term digital twin, but think of it as a term of, what do people do in real estate? They look at an opportunity, they sort of envision a project, then they simulate that project, typically on a spreadsheet, and figuring out, is this a good investment? What are the risks? How much money I can make on it? Well, you can actually build these things and use AI to actually do these things tens of thousands of times in an hour. And that's what I would probably focus on, is exactly build a simulation. And these things, these technologies do exist. The military simulates wars all the time. And they know when they lose, they won't, when they win, and they keep getting better and better. The same can be done, and this, I think, would have a huge impact because it sort of starts de-risking an investment, and these things typically live for a very long time. It's a lot of money goes into them, and you get tied up in it for a very long time. It's very different than a lot of shorter transaction things that people want to do with AI, like booking a trip. But with that said, that's another area that I think I would probably find something to invest in.
Well, and so, I mean, you talk about long term, I think it's still true, even with the development of Hudson Yards, that the average age of an office building in New York City is, I think, over 73 years. So that's a pretty long time horizon. You think of the housing stock in America, pretty old. So David, to you, given the whole portfolio and world that you can look at, where do you see the most opportunity in real estate?
Well, yeah, before you caveat it with real estate, I would say just open AI, just give it all 10 million there, and sleep well at night. Yeah, I think actually facilities management and capital, or human capital management, is kind of where my head went, but in a little bit of a different direction. I get lucky enough to spend a lot of time in the labs here and see a lot of the core technology that's coming out. I think there's kind of twofold that have been really interesting, and we haven't invested in it yet, but getting close. One is actually around understanding video. So we've kind of talked about data. Going back to the IoT, I mean, there was a huge wave of IoT and all these different things to try to understand what's going on in your facility, in your plant, with your workers. It was really hard to actually go build all of it, actually collect the right data, process the data, all the above. Now you really just, with some of the new stuff coming out, you just need a camera, and all that data, you can do it in real time for really, really cheap. The obvious stuff is security and understanding what's going on, who's in and out of your property. There's so many different applications that can be built on top of that if it's real time and really dirt cheap. So I think that's really interesting. And the second is actually on the robotics side. I've been banging this drum for a long time. It's always been too early, but what we've been seeing now is I'm not talking about the humanoid robotics that's going to replace people and all. That's probably 20 to 30 years out, hopefully. But the ability for robotics, really cheap, $5,000 to $10,000 robots, to do manual tasks and learn them very quickly, get in a room they've never seen. Physical intelligence in the city just cleaned a house that they've never seen before. They just dropped the robot in, they figured it out, which is pretty crazy. And so I think if you apply that across, either construction or as maintenance, property management, security, all these different applications, I think that's actually a place I'd invest a lot of money in.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the video, and I'm going to take static photos using Google Earth, but I mean, even the insurance companies now in California are using AI to parse through digital imagery around renewal of your home insurance. And so, and actually, Bob Edelstein, one of his friends, got a call saying, "Hey, a tree is over your house in Southern California. If you want to renew, you need to cut it down." And so, I think that piece of digital imagery, basically analysis, our properties are so rich in that it's interesting. But Brent, you were going to...
Or I was just going to say, I'm glad Dave, you mentioned robotics, because that is one of the big applications of AI, computer vision, AI, robotics, that I think we're going to see a lot of huge opportunity just because of the physical nature of our industry. But it's already happening in very pointed ways today. You look at things like drywall finishing, or layouts for vertical construction. printing layouts. There's some tools out there that are remarkably good, and I agree, we're a long way away from these humanoid, style robots that we kind of see a lot in the news, but very targeted, very specific, relatively low cost hardware, very strong ROI. It's already happening in some cases.
So before I could go on forever with questions because I'm so interested in all this stuff. Any questions from the audience in our last 5 minutes? Yes.
To 10 people. I understand clearly use of AI for larger firms like Divco West with facilities, with property management, with leasing. I'm still struggling to understand, what's available today in the market in AI that could help what we do day to day. So some of the things we struggle with are in this marketplace, we've got buildings we need to lease, how we're more competitive with other spaces when there's a lot of supply in the market. We talk a lot about capital raising, how we're going to do it. Are we going to create a fund of high net worth individuals? Are we going to go out and do structured relationships with larger LP partners and day-to-day project management? What is out there in AI today that helps small to mid-size real estate development firms?
Yeah, I'll jump in just to throw a couple things out there. I think there's the horizontal tools, the big tools like OpenAI are remarkably good at a lot of things, and we've been pleasantly surprised a number of times internally of how good it is at doing a lease abstraction, or how good it is at analyzing the risks of a lease or analyzing the risks of a construction legal agreement. Things that you might think, oh, well, maybe you need a more, expensive or tailored or, well-funded, specific tool to do it. So I'd say definitely jump in with some of these large kind of generic tools because they can solve a lot of things. But yeah, I think, data ingestion, whether that's on the underwriting side or the asset management side, or just handling leases, PSAs, NDAs, all the different types of documents. I think there's a lot of kind of initial work just to get the data in, put it in the right format, upload, get it into whatever your systems are, or just shortcut the time it's going to take for your team to have to review that and pull the key information out. I think that's kind of one use case internally where we've seen some great success, again, without having to kind of go down a very expensive kind of custom route.
Maybe so just to add, because I think it may be helpful, because our industry is, and you bring up a great point, right? So many small companies, you don't maybe have a permanent capital base against which you can say, I'm spending 75 bips on R&D every year or whatever it is. David, you certainly have the, if you will, the luxury of having all of Berkeley's resources, being able to get in the lab. But if there's lay people out there that want to try to stay as abreast as they can of the changes going on, where would you lead this Luddite asset class to look at? Is it the Hard Fork podcast or picking up Anand's YouTube videos? Where would you go?
Yeah, I still try to figure that out myself. Right. Yeah, it's still just a lot to handle for someone who's doing this full time. Honestly, I think there's so much good content out there. Yeah, actually, YouTube I spend a ton of time because even I'm not a highly technical person. I'm dealing with highly technical people constantly. That actually does a great job of just exploring what's going on. There's plenty of, call them influencers, right, around tech that want to do that. Same with podcast. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. There's actually really great real estate tech specific Twitter accounts. You have to kind of go find them, but that just kind of starts the flywheel. Then you get posts or you see posts, you see research, you see articles, whatever, and you kind of just keep going down that rabbit hole. I don't think there's an easy way, to be honest. And it's also changing daily. There was a joke, but I think it's true. We talked about YC in the last talk. Like 75% of those companies die because OpenAI just changes something recently, or they launch a new product, right? Like that's never happened before. Just the speed is so incredible. So it's a tall task for even someone who's doing this all day, every day.
Yeah.
And just in terms of places to go too, I mean, there's some great kind of real estate tech, construction tech events where you can go and, see a quick demo of, dozens of companies all in the same room, which I think are definitely pretty helpful, whether it's CRE tech in New York or Blueprint, or actually even just this week, there's in our Future Tech, kind of construction tech focused conference this year in San Francisco.
So Martin, in our closing moments here, from your perspective, right, because you've been at this, you've seen a number of games, played out with deployment. What would be your recommendation to Luddite real estate professionals in how best to think about where AI is going and where they should really be focusing to create value for them?
I would second that actually OpenAI is incredible, right? It's a lot better than most people think. It does make mistakes. So you should probably document some stuff, because if you ask the same question 10 minutes later, you get slightly different answer, and so on and so forth. So, but it learns from you. It's still the chain of thought, how long it remembers things is kind of flaky, but it is really good. Especially for day-to-day stuff. We're a small organization. I mean, lease abstraction. I mean, you don't even need to do that anymore. Just upload all your leases every time. Give it a lease, 40, 50, 60 pages. In about a second, it tells you whatever you want to know about the lease. You can upload all your leases and find out stuff around, what are the similarities. But I think, you could really use this for, immediately, just for efficiencies and eliminated redundancies. So that's very important. And also you can use them to sort of kind of understand how to engage. It can give you thoughts and ideas about how to engage for, the market in general, what are some of the better things to do, and so on and so forth. It kind of knows a lot. I don't know how. It obviously uploads a lot of data into it all the time about what's going on day to day, right? Its stuff is pretty up to date. But at the end of the day, my advice is what I think Anand said: start playing with these things, because we can talk about in abstract all the time, but once you start playing with these things, you're going to find exactly how you want to interact with it, and there's a ton of different ways that it can help you. And I would start with simple stuff like OpenAI.
Great. So unfortunately, we've got use cases coming up, so you can also ask questions for them. But again, trying to have this funnel go even narrower and deeper. But please help me thank the panel for a great discussion and an opening one for us at the Fitcher Center that we're going to have a lot more of. So thank you.
Well, it's been a great morning so far, and we are moving lickety-split into our final panel of this short symposium morning. I'm Larry Rosenthal, and I teach public policy here on campus, and I'm also a lawyer. So when it comes to AI, if the field is in pre-K, then I think I'm in daycare. But I'm also, I studied early in my life at college, I studied romantic poetry. And there's something about magical thinking that is kind of inhering in this experience as well. We don't know exactly what AI will do. And in fact, if we receive wisdom afterwards and then go to ask the scientists and the designers, can you explain what AI just did? They will shrug their shoulders. We are in that world of the predictably unpredictable, which is marvelous, exciting, scary, interesting, and as a lawyer, I'm thinking a lot about liability and risk, and I know you all are too. To what do we entrust AI with, and to what do we reserve our human judgment? when push comes to shove in the world of business. Well, we're delighted to now, as Chris was saying, we're kind of drilling down into the funnel, actual use cases in the business at firms with dynamic leaders. And so please help me welcome first Karen Guthrie, who is Managing Director of Investments at BGO. And Adam Nakagoshi, who is Regional Design Technology Director at Gensler. And Jeremy Spillman, who is co-founder of Hank and has really lived into the space of facilities, which I think we heard the prior panel say, well, let's invest in some of that, interestingly enough. So how do we get started? We had a batting order, and why don't we stick to it? So we'll start with Karen and then turn to Jeremy and then turn to Adam for opening conversations. So I understand that BGO is experimenting with utilizing AI technology to assist the investment committee. That sounds high stakes to me. So what is it? How does it work? And how's it helping?
Great. Well, thank you all for having me. It's good to be here. I would agree with the comments earlier that I think the application of AI, at least in the investment space, is definitely daycare to preschool in terms of how we're utilizing it. But I think it really resonates with me, also the comments earlier of we just have to start using it to see what it can do for us. And so at BGO, we've been beta testing a version of ChatGPT that is a closed-in system. It has access to an enormous amount of BGO data. We call it AIM, AI for Investment Management, very clever. And we are using it throughout our daily business. So our investment team on the investment side and our asset management team, they're piloting the program to see what are the best use cases for the system. What can it do?
Are they doing so willingly?
Well, there are laggards and there are earlier adopters in the system. I think some people are more inclined to use it than others. And I think a lot of it is just trying to understand how best we can use it, right? What are the best prompts? What are the best use cases? Like, how do we go about, I think the lease analysis is a great example, but how exactly do we go about it, and can we trust the output? Is it 90% correct? Is it 80% correct? And like, how correct do we need it to be for certain situations? There's some low stakes situations that I think it's really good at. You know, we're entering a new submarket. We need to understand historical context of that submarket. You know, why is it there? What are the key drivers? That's really low stakes and it's a great tool for that. I think when we talk about once we tie up an investment and things are going before our investment committee, that's really high stakes. And so we have to feel 100% certain about what goes into our investment books. And so, that takes some human discernment in addition to the tool.
It does sound like when it comes to information assembly, taking a document dump that is, the appendices for this massive offering memorandum and telling a story about what those documents contain. The question is, have we begun to entrust AI with, say, grading a particular investment? Where perhaps the investment committee has an agenda and they will have a ranking of the most attractive to least attractive opportunities that has been given to them by a non-human agent, or hopefully given to a human who then reviews it and tries to validate it. Are we into that space yet? So
I would assume that our investment committee uses it. I think some maybe more than others, but they're real estate experts. They are experts at investing in real estate. They may not be experts at a particular submarket or product space. We invest nationally across many asset classes and across the spectrum. So there's a lot that gets put in front of our investment committee, and I would assume that they use it similarly as a tool to help inform them. I think they still, rank and improve investments themselves.
And those with the longest and most storied careers, if you ask them, how did you know about a particular property or a particular opportunity, what was the reasoning? They might say, you know, I really don't. It was a gut instinct. It was an intuition. And so there's something relating to that human level of judgment which we don't seek to explain compared to really this informed machinery that we hope doesn't have intuition, but maybe someday we'll get there where we believe that entity is a being as well. But we're at this kind of forefront. How are the humans and the machines getting along?
Well, I think they're getting along. I think that's a great point that you bring up, is that there is implicit bias in our view of investments, right? If you have a personal connection to a certain asset or a submarket, or you have a friend that goes to a doctor in that medical office building that we're about to buy, that informs or you have a bias, an implicit bias towards or against a certain investment, right or wrong. But I think AI can help remove that bias at times. We have, it's not necessarily AI, but it's a large language model, a data science model that we used to help predict rent growth nationally. It reviews almost 400 markets. Now we've trained it to do sub-market level rent growth forecasting. And that has really helped our investment team and our investment committee kind of remove that bias from some markets that they might have had originally.
And if it's 30,000 variables, AI says, feed me more, feed me more.
Yeah.
Not enough. Well, the challenge with use cases is getting them to talk to each other. So thank you, panelists, in advance for thinking through the differences in these applications, which are complementary in the real estate sector writ large. And investment committees are a particular animal, for sure. Jeremy, you told me a beautiful story about how Hank came along. Can you please repeat that story for the audience, for folks who might not know what Hank is or what it does?
I guess
for you, it's almost a decade in progress.
Yeah, I guess I tell a lot of stories, so I'm not sure which exactly what that was. But, the way that we had always envisioned Hank, from the start was, can we make a better energy project, right? And I think that was really the core of what we were doing. And again, this was 2015, 2016, well before, AI was a thing. We really tried to pitch it more as like model-based programming, model-based, big data, getting it away from there. And, we would look at these projects that you would go sell from, both my sides and the co-founder, and it would be, 4-year payback. And people seem to be really excited about that. And we would look at these buildings and kind of go, well, what if we could do it faster? What if we could, provide this immediate payback because the data exists in the building? We're not talking about the most complex stuff in HVAC. It might sound that way, but it's really just, sheet metal and fans. And, what could we do to really try to push that for this quick, immediate payback utilizing just software, right? And that was our big push there, was not so much thinking that we're going to, change all this, things with AI. Obviously, it was a little early on it, but really was just a different way to look at an energy project, and a different way to get a payback, and a different way to approach building ownership groups. And that was really our big thing, was if we could go in there and just be so different from the way that everything was always sold and approach things in a different way, we could have a much more immediate impact. And it really felt like a lot less competition at the time too.
And this occurs at the layer of building engineering and facilities management. And right now, teaching public policy at a time like this, I'm totally in the market for good, positive success stories. The California Energy Commission, an agency of our state government, made a judgment that this was worth investing in a long time ago. So what was the value proposition that they were promoting or that you were selling to them?
Well, I think it was because in our initial pilots, we got it to work, I guess, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it, but was, you kind of had this at the time, and I think that we're getting in a similar position right now with some AI. It's where you had like this graveyard of analytic platforms, right? Everybody wanted to bring you data. Everybody wanted to provide you data on what you should do, how you should do it. Here's the data. And then you, as a building owner, got stuck with this data and go, all right, cool. What do I do? I have this massive report. I have this data lake. I have, this data. And we were able to approach it in a way that said, don't look at the data, right? That's our job. We'll take the data outputs, but we're also going to provide the data inputs. And I think that clicked for the California Energy Commission, where, I think it was Cal Seed, and I think we were like the third, I don't know, it was like tranche maybe. And I think that they'd already had probably a few other analytics. And I think analytics got pitched a lot. So to see this concept of like, don't worry about the data. You don't have to look at it. All you got to look at is your energy savings, improved NOI, all those different types of things. So I think that's really what resonated, was getting away from providing data, providing reporting, and really focusing on providing results.
And was it already the case at the time that the weather data and the energy pricing data that's dynamic and always changing was already loaded into those kind of building operations models?
We never touched the data from like the building operations on that. We would, get weather data like you would from an airport, right? So we could still predict out and say, hey, it's going to get hot over the next 3 hours. You couldn't really pull that from a lot of what existed in the building. So us being able to take multiple data kind of exports and build that into our overall model, like, again, I think if you looked at the the Hank AI probably isn't anywhere close to what would be considered AI now, right? It is just model-based HVAC control that nobody really wanted to touch. So we only had, a certain amount of inputs that we would either get from the building, and our outside inputs really were limited to, weather and then our own energy models. So it's just, again, a different way, I think, to approach just a very standard, something that's been done like this, for a very long time.
Well, I want to talk more about futures in a moment, but let's turn to Adam. From investment analysis and information processing to building engineering, facilities management, and conquering, the energy waste demon, say, in the interest of savings and perhaps carbon containment, we turn to design and vision. As an architect, and particularly as an architect working in a large firm that has taken a devoted interest in prop tech, RIT design, and architecture, what's that journey been like? You've been at it for several years, and how have you seen it evolve? And then what is the AI piece that's emerging?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And thank you to the Fisher Center and Chris and Larry. I didn't know the story about you being a lawyer. So my wife is also a lawyer. So you can imagine dinner conversation is pretty interesting when I talk about the tech side of things, and she's sort of balancing me with the law, if you will. I think in design, we have been on this journey for a while, and we really focus on this idea of the human-centered use of AI and making sure that we always have the agency in our designers' hands as we go forward. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about what AI will do to help automate processes, replace things in the traditional design and construction process that technology will start to take over. But we're starting to look at it as ways as how can we build time back in people's days that ultimately allows them the space and flexibility to do things they love. So when I tell my daughter what I do all the time, she's 13 years old now, I like to tell her that I go to work every day with a passion to give people the cheat code. So anyone that grew up a gamer or has people in their families that are gamers, there's always that cheat code that the left down upright A, B. And so I'm really on this mission of how can I give all the designers, the design managers, the partners at our firm, the cheat code that ultimately allows them to wake up and then go design, not go join a meeting, answer emails, respond to contracts, those sorts of things. And so we're on this journey of thinking about how can AI and other process automations, both on the design side, the creative side, and also operationalizing it within our organization to help bring that passion back to and the joy that we have every day coming to work.
And we talked a little bit before the panel about the kind of setting human ingenuity afloat, sparking it anew because AI will stimulate new vision, new thoughts. It can be clever because it thinks outside the box, perhaps. So how do you use it to kind of accelerate things that can be accelerated, but slow down creative teams to broaden their vision?
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that too. I mean, slowing down. I mean, oftentimes it's this idea of the saying of, slow down to go fast. Sometimes it's even going fast now to slow down. And so we're trying to allow us this space to actually rethink and restudy processes. So I was in a workshop actually traveling this last weekend about the size of this room, and the focus of it was digital storytelling. And so a lot of where my area of expertise and focus on in my background is helping tell the stories of design. And so I actually started the whole group by asking everyone, and you don't have to participate today, but I said, the first question is be a little bit vulnerable. And in the last 30 days, I asked everyone to stand if either watching a show or a movie, they brought tears to their face. And it was a pretty resounding, maybe 85 to 90% of the audience, including myself, stood up. And then when we asked everyone to sit down, this is where that interesting moment comes, is when we talk about design, and if I challenge you all, when you go back and you think about real estate or commercial real estate or how you're selling property or how you're thinking about getting stakeholder buy-in or investments, maybe that opening scene isn't the building. Maybe it's not the interior design. Maybe it's actually the person or the people or the community that's going to inhabit that space. And so when we think about how we tell the story of design, thinking about the memories of a movie that stays in your head or a song that stays in your head, we're often trying to think about, can the AI allow us to bring this to life using things like text to image, image to image, image to video now, to then create stories that actually accelerate the process to then use that as an asset to go have meaningful and engaging conversations.
And it's almost like from design tech director, you are becoming a creative director, just a film director. You're going to produce a set of images that evoke a response. I think things are less romantic in the investment world, but still, there are times where the numbers are a little bit marginal, but there's a sense on the committee that they do want to take the risk because of those intangibles. So one question I have for all three of you is, where do we begin to kind of unleash imagination with these tools? Because it's going to do the analytics well, but might it kind of help us with other things? And will the internal and external clients come to expect that we will be telling very sophisticated, evolved stories with the data that we have?
Yeah, I think it will. I think we have access to this incredible tool at our disposal to help write a great narrative around, the submarket, the tenant, the opportunity. And I think that can, to your point, like freeing people up to do and find opportunities. Like when you take a step back, AI is a really powerful tool and can help with the efficiency, getting to the right decision, maybe faster, and getting to a better decision. There's still very much a human element to real estate, and that is, I think, the core of our business, and maybe why we've been such a laggard in terms of this adoption is it has been a people business, and that differentiates it, I think, from other types of real estate investing avenues. So I think like what our clients and what our investors are expecting, like that work product, that like fully formed thesis, I think they've always expected it, but I think maybe it's more efficient for us to get there now, and some of that content creation that we give to our external stakeholders. But I think at the core of it, it's still very much a human aspect.
Yeah, I think that is a good way of translating the notion that an industry is a laggard. I wouldn't take that lying down. Everyone who reserves judgment, is contemplative, is calm and patient, looks to the champions who are out there over their skis like they're lagging. Rather, I think we're waiting for some of the kinks of these systems to be worked out. Internally, that has to be a heavy lift to change the culture of human data analytics, assembly, the gathering of the information, the putting it together into form, the asking the hard questions using those existing algorithms, which were still automated for the last generation. Nonetheless, how has that story gone where you've needed to reacculturate people into a phase of their career where we're going to use new and different tools that won't always work so well?
Yeah, I think it's gone actually better than I expected because I think to the point earlier, the interface is so easy and it produces really good outputs. So it does help you. Like the value proposition isn't hard to get across to people to use this tool. It's just reframing that the tool is there for their use and that you should think about using it more than not. More than just a search engine. And so we're trying to create these use cases that can help people understand, okay, how best can I use it, and how will this help me get more efficient in my job. But I don't think it hasn't been a hard implementation.
I think it's really important to recognize that management decided to give a soft challenge to the organization. Didn't have to do that. Could have said, well, we're going to wait for a few years before we experiment with this. But I think once you get that signal, then it motivates the organization that the future is coming sooner than we think. And the fact that there might be a distribution across sectors and across industries over when they want to take that leap, I think that's to be judged carefully. We might learn about risk perception and about how managers are putting those stories together in terms of any new technology. I don't know whether I'm onto something there, but it's really exciting that a firm the scale of yours is leading the way and may have stories to tell.
We're just starting, so we'll see.
Larry, I want to add, I think, one thing that as a design firm we often think is we want to be in the position, or have always thought, we want to be in a position of being the ones that come up with the ideas. But I think more and more we're finding our clients are incredibly sophisticated. They have incredible minds within their own organizations. And now this technology is actually bringing it to them where they could come to us with an idea already in their mind. Like, think about if I was going to go build my own custom home and I wasn't in the design industry, I'm going to do my research, right? I'm going to go to the things that I can probably get really easily, right? Maybe it's now ChatGPT, maybe it's Pinterest, maybe it's YouTube of some sorts. And I'm going to walk in and be like, take these 10 things and make it into something. Then hopefully they're going to use their expertise to guide and curate that. And so now we're actually kind of taking a step back to think, we know our clients are going to have this. We know they do have it. What are they going to be asking us? And so rather than just diving in further and further and further to be like, let's go faster, faster, let's also make sure we're gathering around tables and having a discussion like, what should we help advise them when maybe they're coming to us with some really, really valuable research? And so those are some of the ways we're also thinking about it. It is going to get democratized. Everyone has it. I mean, we're using it for my daughter's studying at times, making podcasts to listen to it, like thinking about new ways of learning. And so I think the same goes for whether it's real estate, investment, or even design. Like, everyone is going to be bringing this to the conversation.
And I think one of the things you might take note of if you see slowness to adopt is that they haven't experienced any competitive pressure to do so yet. And maybe that's a bit of a gathering storm as well, where you'll be sorry if you don't in 25 because you'll have missed the boat. But that doesn't change the fact that it's risky. I'm wondering about that kind of acculturation piece for Hank and energy efficiency, HVAC management, building engineering. It doesn't sound like you'd have a lot of acculturating to do. You're just giving a better mousetrap to building engineers who already are in search of one. Or am I off the mark there?
I wish I could just say yes, but I mean, you're also going against the way that things have been done for a long time in certain industries, right? So we talk about, laggard, slow adoption. There's certain parts of facilities management that aren't incentivized to improve. After we were acquired by JLL, it was a really hard realization to kind of learn that it felt like we, as Hank, almost like had levels of competition against the management services that we offered. And that was just, something that we had to adopt to. And it's, I think something that we're all talking about now is where we didn't want to replace an engineer, but what if we could compete, in the market with this tool and say, hey, we still want to sell you 4 engineers, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But with this Hank option, our engineer's output is now, 1.25x as a standard engineer. So think about the attention that's going to be paid to your building in a way that they can't do. Think about the way that the tenants are going to benefit in a way that they can't do. So once we were able to get past a lot of that, and granted we did name our AI a person's name, so fear of replacement probably wasn't top of mind when we did that, so lessons learned. But I really think that was when we started to see the accelerant of being able to grow and be part of the larger organization was to really focus on, hey, we're not here to replace anybody, we're here to maximize everybody's output.
And I want to ask a little bit about that, all 3 speakers, something around the issue of efficiency and scale. I'm reminded of, kind of running for my dear life to stay away from the Waymo driverless vehicles in San Francisco. Now, I'm a little bit risk averse, but when I'm seeking like a little experiential security blanket, I think to myself, there must be someone at mission control who's keeping an eye on that car. There must be a human somewhere in the production function. So where is the human element? Where is the human fail-safe in each of these use cases? And let's stay with you, Jeremy. What did humans and you and your team still need to do at kind of mission control in a centralized way to monitor performance and to do kind of immediate interventions where things weren't looking good?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the big thing was, weather. You can't, I'm from Sacramento, it was like 118 6 days in a row in July, so you're not going to optimize a lot around that with AI. Like, that's always going to win. But if we did our job right, it was just going to be a hardware failure, right? If we understood the building well enough, then, what we would try to monitor is just the equipment failure, or what was the equipment unable to do, right? How far could you push it to maintain comfort in a building? Those were really kind of the human interventions where we had to decide. I know it seems so, small, but it's like, we've all, been in an office, it's too hot, and we've all complained, right? And so those are the type of things where it's like, what is the level that you would allow the AI to push here and there? That's where the human intervention had to come, In Miami, where it's humid, 71 degrees feels different than a dry 71 degree here, right? So I would say that where we had to, utilize human intervention was with the human intervention from the other side, where Jeremy, if his office was ever under 68 degrees, he wasn't calling the property management, he was calling the ownership group every single time because they felt they had that right. So that was the bigger thing that we had a program. And then also, I think it was mentioned, not a lot of new buildings, right, that we're seeing. We're into a lot older buildings, and if they had been maintained in less than a stellar way, it had, effects across. So you would think, hey, I could go in and, we don't need 100% on a fan right now. Well, as soon as you take that fan down, belts start falling off because it's never run at anything but 100%. So those were really where we had to go in and utilize more of like the HVAC engineering and customer service aspects. But if you went into a strong building with a strong team, I mean, the AI was really, really able to do so much there. So I think just, again, like anything in life, infrastructure, start there, and then let your tools work around it.
And I like HVAC as a kind of a metaphor because we're talking about comfort levels. We're talking about when are humans most comfortable. And I think that technology adoption needs to play into this. Maybe there's this notion that we can be strategically uncomfortable for a time in kind of making a wager that it's going to make our operations better. I imagine when you were in architecture school, Adam, that learning CAD, computer-assisted design, was a prerequisite. They weren't issuing architecture licenses without kind of making sure that we get CAD fluency. But at that point, CAD was a tool. I'm the human, I'm using the tool. Are there discomforts around turning technology into an agent, or perhaps now even a co-equal designer and kind of creator of vision? Where will the human need to continue to assert autonomy? I can't believe I'm talking like this, but it is 2025.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say in my Master's of Architecture school, even using computers was somewhat reserved into the later years in the program because they really wanted you. I had to learn ink on Mylar. If anyone's ever seen this process, you also need a good old, blow dryer or hair dryer. It's painful, but I still keep my radiographs at my desk because it kind of humbles me at times. I really believe that we are in this process where we're evolving to this co-creation model, both from the human co-creating with the AI, but also how is that AI basically going to ride sidecar with us as we're starting to go through the design and construction process. And, one thing that again, going back to this idea of if it's human-led, if we give the agency, maybe it's not just we're going to have, and maybe it's my architecture side, like less is more is more. It's not just mean we're going to put out more product, more work, but rather we're going to give ourselves that space to really think through those decisions and stress test them. You know, at GENS, we've done a lot of research into future buildings, and this concept has come up a lot recently of the 500-year-old building. And so right now, you know, sometimes the industry can be very transactional. It's like, we need to go after this feasibility study. How can we reposition this building? What could this new building look like? Who would our potential tenants be? If we're using AI to tell stories, to reimagine, to re-envision, what if we actually study that building, study it when it's repositioned in 20 years, again in 40 years, and then again in 60 years, and then you're building this partnership, this long-term relationship with everyone involved, all the stakeholders, the community, so they're not just saying what this impact is right now because they may not like that immediate, but you start to build the future of the journey of what you're going on, right? So when we're planning at large scales in our cities, that's the goal, but if we're also doing it at a very, very small level or macro level, like, it starts to build and build. So I think that's where, you know, having that co-pilot, as we're hearing a lot, is going to be really powerful, and something that I know we're turning a lot to in our process.
And that is bold. You know, the notion that a non-human entity would ever be accountable for its decisions is part of where the discomfort arises for me, where if we entrust investment decisions to a co-equal partner who's steering with us, and then we ask it to trace ROI over a period of years, we expect it to feel bad about poor decisions. But I imagine that reaction is still going to stay in the human investment committee, and, you know, with humans firmly at the controls of the bottom line for the longest time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're there yet. But I do like, you know, what Martin was saying on the last panel about, you know, scenario analysis and getting better at how we are just trying to evaluate potential opportunities instead of running, you know, a handful of scenarios on a potential outcome. That gets more fluid. And I think things like that, applications of AI to help our investment committee make decisions, I think can be really powerful. But I think the decision will still lie in the human, but there will be other factors that influence and help make their decisions.
Do not go gently into that good night. Well, there's another kind of side of this, and I want to turn soon to audience questions as we begin to wrap up, which is the notion that we're not just doing buildings anymore. We're doing buildings in place, buildings in neighborhoods, buildings with neighbors. Used to be we were maximally interested in those neighbors if they were comps. But now, are we interested in building a capacity where it really is more about a neighborhood and a single investment's impact on urban form writ large? Does AI enhance that capacity, and is that a kind of a forward-looking frontier for an investment committee?
Oh, I think definitely. I think that's a great application of AI. I think one of the coolest parts about real estate is placemaking, that you are part of the community. You're shaping how people interact with their built environment. And I think AI is the application of that in AI is an excellent way to use it. I mean, you would know.
And quick thoughts about this urban form question, because I think it starts to get really exciting, especially for those who've been imagining, you know, building cities growing from the ground up and how they would be optimally designed, garden cities of tomorrow and the rest of it, and California tomorrow out in Solano County. We're beginning to think about fabricating vision, but we would be able to do so with so much more technical advantage here.
Yeah, and I'll take a quick technical detour to say, you know, the thing about all the prompting that we're doing, this is crowdsourcing. There's so much information that it's gathering at the same time, right? So when you think about, we're leveraging it, and yes, it's very powerful. At the same time, it is also learning and improving based on the input that we're feeding it. And so when we think about design, one of the gaps that we've always tried to figure out how do we solve is, yes, design and construction, but then there's also the planning and approvals process, then there's also the community engagement and outreach. And what if we start to short circuit that loop by actually putting things in our communities where you can start to crowdsource information? So for example, some research done of like, could we put a prototype, you know, somewhere, you know, on Shattuck, for example, where any student could walk up, go in there, prompt a little bit, what would you envision downtown to look like? And people just start engaging with this, And over time, you start to see what is the opinions of the people that would actually inhabit those spaces. And this could potentially start to inform the design, the investments, and the process as you go forward. And it gives you a lot more leverage if you go into the city saying, this is not just what Gensler co-created with so-and-so, but rather this is also representation of the community. And then when you go in front of the community to have that voice, it could be unanimous. So those are, I think, some of the ways we also see this happening.
I think it's interesting, too, because we're looking at Engage California and other examples of using AI technologies to really begin to provide greater impetus for democracy itself, greater involvement, participation, and the meaningfulness of those feedback loops. I wanted to ask a quick question, Jeremy, before we open it up, which is kind of thinking about the future. We've been doing a little visioning here. What's the next set of steps for buildings, facilities, and engineering in the AI startup world? He asked, knowing Jeremy has some things going on.
No, it was funny. I was, shared the story was once we were acquired by JLL, the first thing that they wanted to give us a bunch of money to do was to improve our models, right? Like, hey, go get a bunch of data scientists, bring them in. It's going to be great for you guys. And we sat back and said, if you spent all this money, I can maybe get you 1% more energy reduction, because the limitations that already exist in our built environment. We were cutting edge. We were pushing the limit as far as it could go. So where I see this coming in is, how can we utilize AI to make, I guess, AI better, right? So what are we starting to look at, like the design of saying, listen, I want to go and look at a building very specific to this. I want to design something here. I want AI to control it. I want to have all these automations. I want to do all these things. What is the equipment going to look like? Right? And I think that's what we're starting to see as the models get better and better. How is it improving? Because we have a massive energy problem that we haven't really. AI is great, but being with the energy background, we don't have anywhere near the infrastructure to support everything coming. And the only way that we're going to be able to take care of that here is if AI teaches us how to, right? Kind of those factors that come in. And I think that I see that in all these industries here within commercial real estate is, I can't build a better AI to come in and run a building, right? I need that building to start getting better structurally from an AI perspective. So to me, that's where I see this next, maybe not wave right now, because we still have to get our models better. We still have to get, to a certain point. But I see that as maybe the 5 to 10 year where we're no longer just saying, hey, read this document. Now we're saying, hey, I need my piece of equipment to do this, design it, build it, tell me how to run with it. And I think that's really where I see kind of the next stages of, that equipment and AI kind of joining into one rather than trying to put AI on different pieces of equipment.
It's like asking AI, robot, heal thyself, and maybe there's something there. Questions? We just have a couple minutes left, so go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you all for speaking with us. You guys mentioned placemaking, and we've seen as downtowns have kind of emptied out, a reimagining of urban areas from mono-use financial districts to more mixed-use 24/7 neighborhoods with more placemaking, office to residential, hospitality, more student housing, more street festivals. I'm wondering, how do you see AI advancing or improving that vision of placemaking?
Can AI detect quality of life improving?
Walkability.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of research we've been doing around the walkable city, and exactly that. And I think, first of all, I commend you on all the research and the knowledge that you have on what's happening in the conversations. I mean, look, having a 24-hour city and having both the safety, the comfort, the experience being at the forefront, I think is absolutely critical. And going back to this idea of what is the community going to receive or accept, I think is also very, very important. I use the example of our design we have at SFO, and I'm very proud of that design and proud of the firm for the work that's been done with all of our partners, because when I have family members that visit San Francisco, whether it's the first time they're coming from overseas or something, usually they say that they always say their son or their nephew or someone designed it. I was I didn't do the design, but I was definitely a part of it along the way. But it's usually that they change a different experience in the airport. And last time I just got home last night, actually, and I saw people shopping, and I saw people trying on clothes, well, not watching them try on clothes, but getting their clothes ready to go try on clothes. And I was like, it was really hitting me like a moment of pride to think we're actually changing this experience of what aviation and travel means. And I'd love to see that the same thing happens in our downtowns or our cities or just here in our local communities. If something is put there that we actually have the ability, whether it's through AI technologies or some sort of capturing of data or occupancies or sensors, to understand how is that space performing, how are people engaging with it, and learning from it ultimately to better develop in the future.
Any other comments on that question? We have to conclude.
Well, I would just say there's been a lot of talk on office to residential conversion in the downtown, particularly in San Francisco, where FIDI is 90% office buildings. And I think Gensler has been doing a lot of the work around understanding if that is even feasible, given the current building design. So I can imagine that AI would be very useful in just the feasibility study for some of the conversion that we talk about. A lot of these buildings, unfortunately, can't be converted, just given how they were originally built. But that leads into the conversation. It's a big thing that should be talked about when we're trying to place make and change our current downtown. Is not all of it's actually feasible.
And if AI is responsible for giving me a better city, Bob, then I guess I'm responsible for giving it the data that it needs. Bob.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed the conference today, and please feel free to sort of look at our site at Berkeley, at Berkeley Haas /real estate, and you'll find us on the website. Thank you for attending, and we will be sending surveys, and hopefully you can give us feedback, which will help us make programs in the future. And thank you very much. Great panel.